Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Working for You. I am Lesroy Williams. Thank you very much for joining us for today's program. Of course, your company is very much appreciated from week to week. Today we are going to be having a panel discussion on agriculture fisheries. The Agriculture Department is having some activities in celebration of World Food Day, which takes place on October 16th under the theme Grow, Nourish, Sustain. Together, our actions are our future. So I have with me three persons on my panel. One from the Ministry of Health, one from the Department of Marine Resources, and the other from the Department of Agriculture, who I will introduce in a little while. The world's population and food supply are out of balance. The major producers are China, India, the United States of America, and Brazil. These and other first world countries have enough food and large storage barns with excess for times of shortages. Third world countries depend heavily on these countries to feed their population. Nutrient-rich foods are expensive and often outside the reach of the poor man. On the other hand, the methods used by major food producers to produce food for the world have negatively influenced the environment, wildlife, fishes, the soil, and human health. The Food and Agriculture Organization, otherwise known as the FAO, is a body created by the United Nations to ensure global food security. And the FAO has summarized the situation, stating some 820 million people are undernourished. 11% of the world's population are undernourished. This means they have a low caloric intake below minimum energy requirements. 820 million people globally, as I mentioned before, are undernourished. 22% of children younger than 5 are stunted. They're significantly shorter than the average for their age as a consequence of poor nutrition or repeated infection. 9% of the world population, around 697 million people, are severely food insecure. 1 in 4 people globally, 1.9 billion, are moderately or severely food insecure. If we are to restore the balance of nature and a healthy population while ensuring a safe future, then we must grow, we must nourish, and we must sustain. Today I have with me on my immediate right the manager of the Bass Stay and Old Road Fisheries Complexes, from the Department of Marine Affairs, Ms. SKNIS Wilkes. Welcome, Ms. Wilkes.
Thank you.
I also have with me Mr. Ian Chapman, who is the Crops Program Leader at the Department of Agriculture. And he basically will be speaking to us about the sustainability of the agriculture and fisheries sector. Mr. Chapman, welcome.
Good afternoon.
And then I have Mrs. Latoya Duncan, who is a nutritionist in the Ministry of Health. And she basically was speaking to us about matters of nutrition and the importance really of buying local, eating local, growing local, and so on. Mrs. Duncan, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Good afternoon.
Right. It is really a pleasure to have all three of you here. I know it has been an extremely busy week for all three of you and others in the Department of Agriculture as you seek to make aware the importance that agriculture, fisheries play in terms of food security, sustainability, and so on at all levels. Now, I will start with Mr. Chapman. The department seems to be very passionate and is on the go in terms of encouraging community gardens, back gardens, and so on. And in fact, the ministry will be launching a series of community gardens and working closely with backyard gardeners and so on. Now, what is the rationale behind all of this, Mr. Chapman?
Well, Mr. Williams, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here, and good afternoon to the wider audience in the Federation of SKNIS and SKNIS. Well, this passion, as you can see, and drive has come from the top down. Our minister is energetic about this. He is very passionate. As you alluded to just a while ago, we are in a busy week. We just had the launch of what we call the Bayford's Center of Excellence. I will speak to this a little later in the program, but what has driven the home garden, backyard gardens, community gardens, project association, we see this as a need from, just look at what happened to this year, COVID-19. Nobody was expecting it. And me personally, since March, has been getting a lot of calls from home gardeners. What can they do to plant even something in the yard that they can eat, and they can eat healthier and more nutritious. The ministry will be launching, as you said rightfully just a while ago, 3 community gardens tomorrow. 1 in St. Peter's for the Disabled Association, 1 in Keon, and 1 in St. Johnson Village. Of course, this is a series of community gardens we will be unveiling and unrolling over as the time becomes. But we are starting with these 3 tomorrow as to continue the whole effort that we have started since March, when we would have distributed over some, I'm trying to memorize the numbers correctly, but some over 10,000 seedlings since this COVID pandemic has came to our shores, to home gardeners and persons in the community, free of cost, as part of the government's assisted stimulus package towards the Federation. Yes. So persons have been benefiting since that from March from the ministry and driving this passion, and we have responded to be donating these seedlings free and to make sure that everybody has something in the yard that they can eat, as what Miss Duncan would say, more healthier, more nutritious, and as they would say, more tastier.
Mm-hmm. It's also economical too.
Well, of course. Yes. If I could just briefly consider some growing benefits of growing your own food.
Sure.
It lowers the cost of providing your family. In general, it lowers the cost for your family. It gives you a more healthy and nutritious vegetables to put on your table. Your meals become more personal, tasty, and exciting because you can actually choose what you want to cook. And so you personalize it to your own diet, specifically to that. I'm not a nutritionist, I will leave that to Victoria to speak, but I'm just highlighting some of the things. It provides you with that outdoor exercise that much of us don't get a chance to do. So you could be active in your garden, doing the little weeding, the planting, the watering, And of course, my own personal favorite, it connects you with the earth and nature. To me personally, Mr. Williams, when I go home from work, I look forward to go in my garden.
Yes.
Because after the stress of the day, that is what relaxes me. I just throw all the frustrations away and put my hand in the soil and just start to plant or start to weed, do something. As they say, when it's stress, I just go in the garden and avoid the stress. So it connects you, bring you back. That's wellness to the atmosphere and to the whole balance of bringing yourself back to realization of course, we all will go back to the earth someday. So it kind of connects you with the whole atmosphere and nature.
You know the word humility.
Yes, I do.
And that's what humility actually means, that you are close to the earth. You're close to the ground. You're a grounded person. That is basically the root of the word. Now, of course, what you just mentioned ties into the whole area of the growing and the nourishing and the sustaining, and the whole thing about, local, growing local, eating local, and so on. Now, Mrs. Duncan, coming out of what Mr. Chapman has said, what are some of the benefits of eating locally grown food compared to imported food? I know that our import bill, our food import bill is extremely high. We import so much food, sometimes food that can be grown here.
Sure.
We import, and sometimes too, we think or we have the philosophy that what comes from outside is better.
Foreign-minded.
What is foreign is better. It's not, what is local is not such of a good quality, and so on. How do you debunk all of that? What are the benefits of eating locally grown food compared to the imported food?
Okay. Well, there are so many benefits to eating locally prepared foods. I mean, where do I start? But funnily, one of the most important point that you mentioned is the fact that the import bill in St. Kitts and Nevis is extremely high. As a matter of fact, we import over 90% of our food. So when you think of it, we hardly consume any foods that are actually produced locally, because we are importing 90% of our food. It means practically most of the population is actually eating 90% of imported foods. No. That does not say that it's not eating healthy, so I want to put a disclaimer there. But one of the main keys is that there's a lot of benefits as relates to eating benefits. For one, for example, local food is fresher, and fresh food usually tastes better. Okay, it's a lot more nutritious, because once that food item is picked, within 24 hours, it starts to lose some of its nutritive value. So you're looking at, let's take an apple, for example, who have to journey probably from Canada. After 24 hours, the nutrient content in that apple, it starts to diminish, it starts to decrease, because of course the ships won't bring them here on the trees. They are picked before arriving here. Another thing that we have to consider and think about the benefit, it supports you seasonally. I mean, for example, take mangoes, for example. Once ago, mangoes, there was just a certain season when you couldn't get mangoes. And persons used to look forward to that. And so you had persons who used to actually have to go and pick their own mangoes, use journey to those areas. Like, I'm from Sandy Point, and persons would go to Atna, Fais to actually get their own mangoes. You no longer have that, because you have so many variety of foods that I want to use the correct statements here, that has been manipulated so much that you can get these food items during any time of the year. And I think that was one of the benefits to having some of the food seasonal. It helps you to discover foods. Children, for example, one season they see a particular food, another season they see another one. So we don't have the same set of foods on the market all the time. You get to see a variety of foods yearly. It also produces less waste. it helps us to also eat mindfully, because if you have to think about the foods them that you have being seasonal or how you produce them, then you would want to make the most of those food items you have. And another important factor, which even though is not in my profession, is it support local businesses. It helps the country economically, because then if you have more persons producing locally and we have consumers who have that consumer right to actually buy food items that are locally, of course, it means that the most of the money or the funds are staying in St. Kitts and Nevis. Mm-hmm. And I could go on and on, but
those are some very, very good points that you have made, because consumers are more than what they eat. They also have the power to influence what is produced.
Yes, that is true.
Through healthy food choices. Mm-hmm. You see, so if people start buying more local, it's an impetus, a stimulus for people to grow more local as well. So you support local, and of course you would get more people growing local because of the support that is there. Because of the demand, the supply would increase. The supply would increase. Now, in the Caribbean, we talk about the blue economy. And it is the resources that we have in terms of the sea. And that resource, that rich resource that we have, has not been tapped enough. Of course, there are deficiencies. For example, we can talk about we don't have enough refrigeration storage. We can say that we don't do enough salting and smoking and canning and drying. We don't have enough manufacturing industries when it comes to that. So a lot of what we import the imported mackerel and the imported sardine and the imported tuna and all of that. We don't do a lot of canning and all of that sort of a thing. However, fishing is extremely important.
Yes, it is.
And provides livelihood for many of our people. Now, Ms. Wilkes, you are the manager of the Bass Stair and the Old Road Fisheries Complexes. Now, what is your vision for these two fisheries complexes?
Our vision is to contribute to food security, food nutrition security, and supplying fresh fish to our customers for consumption on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. On a daily basis?
On a daily basis.
Right. Now, I know that recently you entered into some agreement with Rams.
Yes, we did.
Could you tell us a little bit about that? And what was the rationale for doing that? Because, fishermen, just like our farmers and so on, have to be able to not only sustain a market, but to be able to sustain themselves.
That's correct, Mr. Williams. As our vision stated that we want to contribute to food security and food nutrition security, on the 11th of September 2020, this year, the Bass Stair Fisheries Complex has collaborated with Rams Supermarket, where the Bass Stair Fisheries Complex would provide locally caught fish to Rams for human consumption.
Yes.
We have sealed the marriage with Rams Birdwalk and Rams Buckley's thus far. It's been going great. Persons love what is taking place. And because of this, Rams itself is a one-stop, one-shop supermarket. So right now, the price is $19.50 per pound. And I'm inviting everyone to go to Rams, ensure that you buy your locally caught fish. If you don't want to go to Rams, you can always come back to the Bass Stair Fisheries Complex and the Old Road Fisheries Complex, where we will provide you with your locally caught fish, because we believe in providing protein to the Federation's people.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, I have gone to Rams and I've seen them with their little boat there that is, it is filled with ice and so on,
yes.
and they're selling. And the fish you know, is very big. There's some big, they're plate-sized fishes.
Plate-size, yes.
And I've bought as well. You know, sometimes you get 3, but you know, all you're paying, you know, just 3 fish, but they're big.
Remember, I said it's a one-stop, one-shop. So
One-stop.
you're actually paying for the convenience.
Okay, right. Now, Mr. Chapman, we're speaking about agriculture. We're speaking about fisheries. But the key word today is that of sustainability. Sustainable agriculture. Sustainable fisheries. What does that word really mean? Sustainable.
Well, Mr. Williams, in my personal opinion, sustainable means that we can't just think about now. We have to think about the future and our future's future. For instance, I can't just think about what I am doing. I have to think about what my son will build when he inherits this federation, and his children's after him, and his children's children's after him. So whatever practices that we and now will be rolling out from the Ministry of Agriculture, Marine and Fisheries must be sustainable. For instance, I spoke towards the development of the Bayford's stock farm, the Center of Excellence as we are calling it.
Yes.
Yeah, so I didn't even know till today that Bayford's was around or was since 1726. But I can't speak to them. Maybe they didn't have the vision and foresight that would have make it, didn't have to reach to the state it has to we know to be doing it. Of course, that is one of the things that the now minister, now permanent secretary, the whole administrative part of the Ministry of Agriculture, Marine Resource and Fisheries, and now anything projects, plans, they are sustainable for the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis and make us the envy of the rest of the CARICOM nations, our countries.
You know, one of the things that has worked against sustainability in the Caribbean is that with agriculture, is that we are basically at the primary stage of agriculture. We've not moved so much beyond that to the secondary stage of manufacturing. I mentioned the canning, the agro-processing, and all of that sort of a thing. I can recall that, you know, even while many countries in the Caribbean, we no longer produce sugar, but we produce sugar here, but then we'll send it to first world countries, to metropolitan countries like England and so on, and they would refine that sugar and they will send it back to us at a heftier price and that sort of a thing. So we are still basically at the extractive, the primary. I suppose it takes time, but we have moved away. We are moving away from being agrarian economies more into what we call tourism-based economies and service economies. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic, what that is showing us is that it has fueled hunger, one, and two, the tourism industry is pretty much at this time dead. It wants to be resurrected right now. It has been killed by a pandemic. And what about agriculture? We now realize how important agriculture is and the focus that we should place on agriculture that a lot of times we have not placed. What do you have to say about that, Mr. Chapman?
Well, Mr. Williams, truthfully, as I said, tourism, as in my opinion, too, is dead, and it is now poised for the Ministry of Agriculture to take that lead as the front developer of the Federation. Well, in all due respect and thanks to our sister ministry, the Ministry of Tourism, they have just also partnered with the Department of Agriculture to host a backyard garden competition. So you could see that tourism themselves is seeing the benefits and light of agriculture as part of their collaborating partners.
Yes.
Because of course, as you indicated, nothing is happening in tourism. And of course, tourism, of course, their marketing team, they want to show that something is, they're still doing their partner with us. And I now take this plug to encourage all the backyard persons, home gardeners. They have various, I think, 3 categories to register. I think registration closed on the 31st of October, which it signifies also that is the days our borders will be opening. So that day, and personally, my birthday, so I tell people, I look a positive. It's my birthday, so we think it's a Nevis will be blessed. We will stay away from any significant pandemic. So, of course, but back to the whole question you asked. Mr. Williams, I don't want to say I've traveled the whole world, but when I went to Taiwan, when I went to Brazil, some of these major countries that you call, I see certain things in there, as you alluded to, their industries. I know for sure Taiwan don't waste anything, Mr. Williams, from the very scraps. They make the toffee, the candy, anything that you could think about, because through their whatever restrictions are on them, they have to ensure that the people of Taiwan is fed. So they make sure they develop these industries. And I could have said, like, wow, if SKNIS could only take a page from Taiwan, and we have some of these industries. And then I checked on myself, maybe that's why they send you here in a yarn. But of course, and now I have a little light. I am now the new appointed crops program leader in the Department of Agriculture. So some of these stuff that I've seen over the years in Brazil, I saw, as you made mention in Brazil, yes, when I was there one time, you know how they have this block of cheddar cheese. They had it in guava. They have guava cheese like in the same block component. And I think, buy 3 of them blocks and come home and cut them up and go sell guava cheese. Because when I looked at the price, a whole block, big block, was less than $2-3 when I do the conversion. And I said, well, but guava cheese in SKNIS it's selling for so much if I care. But the only thing would have been, of course, you know, when you're traveling, the weight component, so, and having the different stuff that you would accumulate while you're there for 2-3 weeks, so you know you would accumulate souvenirs for your friends and those different stuff. So that idea was momentary. But to allude to that, you said you made it perfectly well, and I'm hoping that a sustainable agriculture has the potential to be a net creator of jobs that will provide higher returns for labor inputs than conventional agriculture. And as you made things, I'm hoping that the rural women and women in general can significantly involve in the critical green economy. You made mention of the blue economy, but we have the green economy, such as the agriculture, and we could partner with energy and do other things, and the tourism. I just allude to the backyard garden. But we could do ecotourism, agrotourism. We have seen Mr. Armstrong has now gone from the conventional agriculture and moving into this agrotourism venture. We have just launched it's with me, I'm passionate about it also, as our ministry is the Bayford's Livestock Center of Excellence. It falls within that rainforest tour that the tourist operators put. So we can even develop agrotourism product there and have, whenever our borders do open back and safe for the tourists them to come, that they can visit our Livestock Center of Excellence and see what SKNIS and Nevis is doing to feed itself and make itself self-sufficient and food secured.
Yes. And, you know, of course, the mindset has to shift.
Yes.
Because there is still a mindset that agriculture is dirty work.
True.
So that's sometimes, and you find that some people, we do not want to get our hands dirty. It's dirty work. And we've moved away from the sugar industry. And of course, people never wanted to cut the sugar cane after a while, and so therefore we had to import people from Guyana and St. Vincent and so on who wanted work, because people here did not want to get into that type of work. And of course, after we finished with the sugar industry and so on, it called for more diversification in terms of agriculture and using those lands and so on to get into other areas of agriculture. Now, the mindset is one thing. Now, you mentioned as well the link between tourism and agriculture. Agro-tourism, you mentioned eco-tourism as well. And if we don't have hotels and restaurants supporting food-related, local food-related businesses and retailers, then it questions really their sustainability. And I want Mrs. Duncan to speak to us in terms of the trust of the Ministry of Health and what the Ministry of Health is doing and has done to support local food-related businesses and retailers, and why.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Williams, and I'm extremely happy that you brought me in here, because Mr. Chapman here got me a little jealous when he spoke and said Ministry of Tourism is their sister ministry. I always thought that they were cousins and Ministry of Health was actually the sister ministry. Okay.
We are all brothers and sisters within the government system.
But yes, over the years, Ministry of Health and Ministry of Agriculture have been tightly related as it relates to the different activities that we try to do in order to promote health, from the agricultural perspective, looking at the types of food we eat. We depend on Ministry of Agriculture in order to boost a lot of the activities that we are looking forward to. For example, the home gardenings. We have done several initiatives with Ministry of Agriculture as it relates to schools, as it relates to chronic diseases. For example, there was once a project, and some health centers still have it going steadily, where the persons with NCDs, particularly those who attended the diabetic clinic, those health centers that had land space available, Ministry of Agriculture assisted them with planting crops and produce for them so that they could be the patients or the individuals being able to utilize those. So if they planted cabbage, they were the one who utilized the cabbage. And we found that a lot of them, they were so appreciative of it that the problem we had the problem that lies with it is that wasn't that we couldn't get persons to participate, but members wanted to make it their own. So we had several clients fighting for these spots, saying, well, this is mine and this is mine, you know. So that is just to show you that there is a lot of opportunities, a lot of space provided for Ministry of Agriculture and Health to do further development. I mean, for this year, for example, I'm extremely happy that Ministry of Agriculture on the Friday is actually doing a local seafood day. My brother ministry, and Ian probably wouldn't like me to talk about this, but they and I fell out a few years ago when they had their pork and beer fest. You know, so I'm extremely elated that they have shifted the focus a little bit, and it's not that I'm against pork and beer. Let me put a disclaimer there. It's just how it was promoted. You know, all type of food, you have an opportunity to encourage the public how to utilize it better. You know, we have local pork, and we also have imported pork. So we have to be extremely careful when we look at promoting and look at how we are going to use some of these items, because pork, for example, get a real bad rap, and I'm not going to kill pork today, and I'm not going to kill Irish potatoes either. You know, but these are some of the local produce that we really need to educate our public about, as it relates to why you can produce some of these foods, why they are still healthy. So Ministry of Agriculture have really been working with us to look at farming and encouraging persons to produce their own. As of even recently, they are looking at doing a cooking show And we are going to use some of these local foods in order to show the population how you can utilize them in different methods. For example, pumpkin, for example, when person think of pumpkin, they think of only boiling it, or probably pumpkin fritters. But pumpkin can be utilized in so many ways. Cauliflower, for example, and for most persons who know me, when I went to primary school, I always speak about this. When we started gardening, that was one of the first crops that we did. And even though I was happy with it, at the end we had our cauliflower to take home. And from walking to school, and before I reached home, that cauliflower was all over the place. Even though I appreciate growing it, I didn't know what to do with it. And so I didn't really take it home because I didn't see my mother using it. So I didn't know it would have been beneficial to us. But now we have cauliflower being substituted as a means for rice. Yes. So once done properly, these foods can be substituted to do any various of menu items, not only in for the kitchen table at home, but also in the restaurants, health facilities, the hospital, for example, school meals. So we are really grateful for Ministry of Agriculture over the years for really extending a hand and trying their very best, especially with the kitchen gardens. I mean, so many persons know that St. Kitts have limited capacity as it relates to a lot of initiatives. And sometimes we really need the assistance from the general public because it's not all the time Ministry of Health or Ministry of Agriculture, because we are the main focus for these initiatives in this country. Do not mean that we do not require assistance from the general public. Okay, so I would like to encourage the general public to actually participate a lot more in some of these activities, find out how you can be a volunteer, find out what activities we are doing and how they can become involved.
Mm-hmm. Now, Ms. Wilkes, I know that fishermen, and so on face challenges. Their work is not particularly easy. It depends on the ocean. It depends on the weather. It depends on the type of equipment that they have. It can be risky. And we can go on. Now, what are some of the challenges that fishermen, the Bastia Fisheries Complex and the Old Road Fisheries Complex face as a government organization?
Mr. Williams, as a government organization, the Bastia and Old Road Fisheries Complexes face lots of challenges. Just to name a few. Inadequate amount of fish from local fishermen to supply to our customers on demand is the main challenge. And we can also reverse that. We have an inability to purchase fish from fishermen on demand. You may ask why. Simply because in government we're dealing with a fixed budget that we need to increase. Given the COVID pandemic, we have seen an increase in demand for fish from our customers and fisheries products as well. As a result of this, our customers have been demanding more and more fish. So an increase in demand would only mean one thing, an increase in budget to meet the fish protein needs of our lovely citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis. So as I said, it can go on and on, but we face one major challenge, the inadequate amount of fish from our local fishermen. So I'm here today to encourage all local fishermen to supply your fish to the Bastia and Old Road Fisheries Complex so we can meet the protein needs of our federation's people.
Right, so you're encouraging them to sell their fish to the Bastia and the Old Road Fisheries Complex.
That's correct.
But some of them actually are on their own.
Yes.
In terms of selling their fish.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Right. Is that okay as well, that they can sell on their own?
That is okay. Mm-hmm. We don't have any problem with that, but we would like if, and I stress the word if, they can only bear with us to, in order for us to supply the protein needs of our customers, bring your fish where we can sanitize it better and properly at the Bastion overfisheries complexes so that we can meet the demands of our
It can be descaled and all of that.
Yes. We have the proper facility for this, so we would rather it become ours so that we can increase the protein needs.
Okay. Now, what kind of support is provided for fishers? Apart from them, coming and partnering with the fisheries complexes to sell their fish, what sort of support is provided for them?
We have great initiatives at the moment. Currently, we're running a relief fund where we get, for the fishers, they can come to the Department of Marine Resources and they can buy their ropes, their wires, all their supplies for fish at a discounted rate. So that is going pretty well.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. Now, Mr. Chapman, the sustainability of agriculture, agricultural products, and so on. Sometimes what I find is that you have so many people growing tomatoes, and then you have a glut on the market with tomatoes. People growing the same things. How can the department encourage more of a diversity of crops? Because we are talking about not just eating healthily, but we're also talking about the diversity in terms of what we eat.
Mr. Williams, thank you. And
on top of that, just before you go, of course, sometimes too, one of the challenges that farmers face is that they put a lot of work into farming, into their production, and then people want to buy their things for next to nothing. And so therefore, some people do not go into farming because they do not see it as a profitable business, a lucrative business. Because you have to deal with the business component. One thing, of course, is to talk about the health and all of that, but the other thing is about the economics. Because I'll tell you something, some people will tell you, look, we buy the Chinese because it's what we can afford. But at the very same time, the fast foods and so on might not be the healthiest thing for you. But the economics is something else. Mr. Chapman.
Well, Mr. Williams, you hit the nail right there on the head. The economics of anything, of course, in terms of any economic situation and financial situation of any individual, they would always go to what is cheaper first and not what Ms. Duncan will say more nutritious or more healthier for you. But some of the challenges, as you will indicate, that will lead to that, what you alluded to, that why the seasonality. Many people may not know this, but 90% are thereabout, close to thereabout, are between 80 to 90% of the farmers depend upon what God sends or the elements of nature. To say frankly, almost 80 to 90% of what depends upon rain.
Yes.
Agricultural system as it is currently is more rain-fed than what you would say irrigated or even technological inclined. So that is one of the focus of the Ministry of Agriculture right now, is to try to shift that paradigm from being at least 80% rain-fed. Of course, we cannot do it one time, but we have set targets to constantly reduce that percentage over the next 4 or 5 years. One of the things that we have now asking and the extension officers to do when they do their crop forecast, we have now manipulated a new brand spreadsheet for them to be collecting the data. So that would be one of the things. As to say, this farm, so we know the actual percentage of farms that are rain-fed, irrigated, and we will address that need. One of the things, again, coming from our minister, that water harvesting, catchments, dams, to provide to farmers so that we can have that, what you say, extended period of production.
Yes. And I'm happy that you mentioned that Mr. Chapman, because over the years we have been having a decline in rainfall. And that might have come about because of the whole reality of climate change. And so therefore it is very important that our catchment of water. There are some people who say that, wait, we don't have really a rainfall problem. What we have is a catchment problem, is that we have too much runoff water. Now, what is being done really to harvest water? Because you harvest the water and you can always have it for use at a later time, and it goes back into this, and so on.
Well, Mr. Williams, to be honest, we're in the process right now of course, there's some water catchments that was built some years ago. Of course, because of maintenance and things, we had alluded, some of them would have got damaged from wildfires and things. So we are now putting a comprehensive package together for repairing the maintenance of these dams and that sort. We are putting them in areas where farming are clustered mainly. For instance, so you may see one in Whites where there's a farming cluster so that the water could be shared for the farmers in Whites. One may go down Parson, down Brotherson, St. Peter's. I think those are the 4 key ones that we may start with. Of course, we know that there are others to be fixed, but these are the more, what we would say, ready and in a state of readiness to fix quickly, so that we can, at least before the active rain season is diminished, that we can store these waters so that in 2021, when the rain starts to trickle off and the farmer says, we can now have that sustained production, as you may call it, that there is not the cluster of certain products and commodities that we, as you alluded to, the tomatoes are, of course. So at least we don't have that vision and foresight. So we hopefully this week should be starting. Of course, we are in the week of activities as we celebrate World Food Day. So it's not saying that it has taken a back burner, but of course the officers and the technical people will be back out next week, keen in on this, and hopefully before the end of this month, you should see that work start to be done on at least 4 dams, so that we can got the water catchments, so that the farmers could now have water during the dry season, or when this rain is not falling that plenty, so that they can have that sustain, or in my opinion, the very critical element that is for growth of the crops, trees, because without water, we would not get. There can be no sustainability. There can be no sustainability.
Life cannot be sustained without water.
As a toy may not like this, one of our sister ministries or the departments would always say, water is life.
Water is life. Life cannot be sustained without water.
And I would always say, food is life. Because if you don't eat, you can't. But again, everything goes back to nature and what God has created. Without the Creator had known all these elements, He didn't make food and didn't provide the water. So He created that balance, and that is what we try to ask our sister ministry in the Ministry of Water Services, at least, so that we could at least have. I know that we are driven by a policy, and one of the things, Mr. Williams, I'm not trying to bash anything right now, but the water policy needs to be addressed, because it doesn't speak to agriculture in general. It has tourism, you have businesses, residential, but it doesn't speak to agriculture. Of course, to be fair to them, that was written when sugar was the dominant.
Sugar was king.
King, as you would say, Mr. Williams. So the sugar cane didn't need water or have that focus for water, because it had been planted when the rain are falling, and then harvested when this rain is not falling, so there was no need for that. And then you would have planted the root crops and not so much of the finer vegetables. The estate would have planted peanuts and sweet potato and yam as with the rotational between the fields. But we have now shifted the paradigm, as you indicated. We have now become more diverse. So of course, we are now trying to partner with our sister, speak to our sister department, because we are all brothers and sisters within the government system, in my opinion. So to at least hear our cry and hear our farmers cry for at least, of course I understand that residential and commercial thing, but just start to think agriculture along the line. Mm-hmm. If you know you have a brackish well that you're not using and it cannot go to domestic, let us see that if we can now generate and maybe put on some filters and send that to the farmers. Mm-hmm. So just engage us with the conversation and have us so that we can do the sustainable aspects, so that we can help feed our nation and help feed our nation healthy, as Latoya would indicate.
Right, and another thing, of course, well, we speak about the whole buy local, grow local campaign and so on. Of course, locally produced food must be affordable.
Yeah.
We cannot speak about people eating healthily with a proper balanced diet, and at the very same time that they cannot afford to buy the fruits and the vegetables. That is one thing.
It's debatable.
That is also.
I like to say that is debatable.
And okay, let's move on to you, Mrs. Duncan. We can speak about environmentalism and there are some arguments, of course, against the local food movement. What are some of those arguments?
Well, for example, but before I get into those arguments, you spoke a little bit about diversity, and I would just like to make the listeners aware, the general public aware, that when we speak about local foods, local food is basically foods that are grown here. Now, there was an argument recently that I happen to be a part of. There's a farm in Oldwood that is currently growing strawberries. We also have a particular area in Sadler's, I think, producing grapes. Not the sea grapes, the imported grapes. And then we have somebody who recently grew one of the red apple trees here in St. Kitts.
So an experiment.
Yes, a person was, somebody was under the impression, well, we shouldn't really try to grow those foods here. But what the public need to be aware of is that most of the food items that we have here, some did not originate from here. And that is how you get a greater diversity, a variety of food items. Imagine if St. Kitts and Nevis produces their own strawberries. I mean, those are some of the foods on the market that normal, common persons cannot afford. So if we are able to produce some of our own, then persons would be able to have more access to these food items and not really stress so much about looking at what the cost might be, because then if the technique is fine-tuned and it is perfect, then normal persons can grow these also in their backyard garden. And so definitely, you need to look at diversity when it comes to food items. Now, about food production and it being more environmental friendly, now, there's a big argument surrounding that. Everything, not only with food, but every action or everything we do to sustain life or to continue to develop, persons are looking at everything being more environmental friendly. And when we look at food, persons would say, well, I don't see anything wrong with that. But when you have an import bill that is above 90%, you're talking about planes bringing food. You're talking about ships bringing foods. And then when you look at being environmental friendly, some of the waste that is produced from a plane, for example, I'm not an aviation expert. So if I'm wrong, I think it's O2 emission or something like that.
Yes.
Yes, you get these things are what is known as pollutants to the environment. And if you think about a vehicle, for example, the ships them that tend to bring the food items them here, you're talking about a vessel that travels probably from Canada or from certain parts of Europe to bring certain food produce here. So you're looking at them coming across of the waters, and you're looking at them, some of their waste from their engines and different things, they go into the ocean, and all those produce waste. So if we were able to grow a lot of these food items, decrease our import bills as it relates to foods, especially with fruits and vegetables, then you're doing the environment a big big thumbs up, because having to depend so much so heavily on imported foods, you're basically doing an injustice to your environment. I mean, St. Kitts and Nevis and a lot of the other Caribbean countries, we have what some persons, and when you look at tourists who would come here, they have never seen a sky so blue. You know, so these are some of the things that you have to think about, that you have to look at. And some persons, I mean, when I first started nutrition, I did not see that link. But that's why we keep evolving, that's why different research is done, and that's why persons have to be able to compare different places and look at why is this and why is that, in order for you to be able to know what is the offset of doing this, what is the advantages of doing that, is it beneficial to me as it is. So these are some of the things we have to start looking at. So decreasing our food import bills bill would be definitely one of the ways, and one of the ways that we keep pushing is for persons to produce more. Not only the farmers, we have a lot of persons who have space in their backyards, and we have now different methods to which persons can produce vegetables and fruits by recycling different help me, they have a specific name for that type of farming.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, and you are getting into the area that I would like Mr. Chapman to address, because you mentioned in terms of the grapes, those grapes and the apples and you know the pears and so on. What we call here pear is really avocado. But you know those fruits that are grown in the temperate climates that require a certain temperature, rainfall, humidity, and you know, and all of that sort of a thing, you know, not being grown here. But at the very same time, they would call for the use of technology to modify the natural environment. And so we can speak about protected agriculture. What do you have to say about that, Mr. Chapman?
Well, Mr. Williams, and when Latoya mentioned strawberries and different grapes and things, my heart went kind of on. Because, not to say that, on a personal note again, strawberry, I've from a business standpoint, I've seen the cost as Ms. Duncan did indicated, and I said, but Ian, you better start thinking about this being a project for you to personally do to feed the country, because Mr. Williams, I have that passion and that drive and that energy for producing and making sure that the country eats healthy and eat a wide variety of commodities. As you said, of course, technology is one of the ways forward for we to go with the sustainability. And as we in agriculture compete with other entities for space and land, because again, we can't continue doing things the conventional and traditional way. We have to move, as Ms. Duncan has indicated, with the current, and life is all about making changes. So we too have, again, maybe I'm here to give the Federation an insight. Hopefully within the next few weeks we will be engaging persons who, again, of course there are some persons who are now doing shade houses, hydroponics. We'll be engaging across the federation, some more younger male and females. We are now starting to target the youth, and as you indicated to that, Mr. Williams, people don't want to get their hand dirty in the soil. So we are moving in this direction. That the hydroponics, the greenhouses. So these are the areas of the paradigm shift of the Ministry of Agriculture. We can also always depend upon the traditional, conventional way of production. Of course, we have to feed, and we have to feed our people. You made mention of how much of the world's population need food. We may say St. Kitts Nevis is only 50-something thousand people, but again, we have tourists visit our shores, and even our brothers and sisters from the region do come. So we can't just think about the population of St. Kitts and Nevis. Of course, there are people there back and forth from the wider world that comes to St. Kitts. So we do have to have diverse and of course show them that our really land of beauty. And I have this, as Lottie always say, this argument with people.
We can grow the apple too.
We can grow the apple too.
And we can grow the grapes too.
And they will taste better in St. Kitts because our soil type, Mr. Williams.
I think so too.
Our soil type, I can't even stress it anymore. We had that argument in January when I was in St. Lucia. They was talking about the Antigua black and how sweet it is. I said, if you go there and St. Kitts, you're 10 times sweeter. Just look at the watermelon that comes from overseas and the watermelon that is grown here. And look at, taste the honeydew and the cantaloupe that are produced here locally. And taste the imported ones. The taste factor.
Like the Carib name for St. Kitts, Lyomega.
Yes, fertile
soil.
Right.
We just have that. We just have something. I don't want to boast about our federation, but we just have something extinct to the rest of the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now the United Nations has said that over 2 billion people do not have regular access to safe, nutritious, and sufficient food. The global population is expected to reach almost 10 billion by 2050. Now that is scary.
Yes, it's
and that nearly 690 million people are hungry. Up 10 million since 2019. And that the COVID-19 pandemic could add between 83 to 132 million people to this number, depending on the economic growth scenario. Now that is something else. It is really frightening. Now, Ms. Wilkes, the blue economy to which we spoke, the sea, using that resource that we have, protecting it, of course, is extremely important. Sometimes tourism, depending on how it is done, is a threat to that very same resource.
Yes.
Because you build how you build and so on, could destroy the biodiversity of the ocean and so on. Now, what new projects has the Department of Marine Resources and Fisheries Complexes been in, especially in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the demand for fish from the customers?
Well, currently we are envisioning to expand in a wide range of products to our customers. Currently we do not offer whelks, crab, squid, sea moss, and a lot of other fisheries products, which our customers have been demanding. Once we are able to satisfy the fish protein of our local demand, and then there's an overflow, then of course we'll be able to spread our wings and supply to a lucrative market, to the UK, US, and all those other countries. So there has been some conversations that we've been having, and there will be, in the future, be fruitful.
Okay.
Mr. Williams, if I'm to add also a plug from the wider ministry standpoint, some of the plans for the marine resources and the development of the fisheries sectors, as Ms. Wilkes indicated, to add the protein to our federation's people, is provision of a training and aquaculture and development facility. That is one of the plans. Of course, even though, yes, we must think about the sea, but we can also do it inland. So that is one of the modern and innovative...
shrimp farms and so
shrimp
on.
farms,
lobster
farms. So some of it adds other varieties of things. So we were having that aquaculture, a provision of an aquaculture training and development facility. The development of marine managed areas. Those are some of the plans so that we can manage our areas in the proper way, that we can ensure that the fishermen, then when they do go and to fish, that they could have catch. And so of course, those are some of the plans. Also the provision for more markets for the fisher folks. Maybe, hopefully, in the Day Bay area, we may add in another complex and add in another responsibility to Miss Weeks as the manager and now spreading her wings wider throughout the Federation. So these are some of the development plans for the whole marine resource and fisheries area that our ministry have.
So we're going to go to the phone lines with the rest of the time that we have left. I'm sure that some people are waiting to call in. So the numbers to call are 466-2666. That's 466-2666, 662-8674, 767-4765, and the overseas number is 1-239-645-4500. We await your calls. Right, so the blue economy. There's a caller online. Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The question is
Could you repeat that, please?
The question is from Ms. Wills.
Okay, Miss Wills, yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Some years ago, a fishing trawler was made being by the fishing department to went over fishermen. I haven't heard anything about that yet now, so I'd like to know what is the situation concerning that.
Ask him to repeat.
Could you repeat that, please?
Some years ago, a fishing trawler was made to be used by the fishery complex who went out to fishermen who wanted to trawl it. I haven't heard anything about it for years now, so I just wanted to know what was the situation concerning the fishing trawler.
Okay, thank you for your question. There's another call. Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Leroy and company.
Good afternoon,
Good
sir.
afternoon, sir.
The great people at the table here.
Yes.
Question to the midfielder for Blackboard here. What name again?
Mr. Chapman?
Yeah, Mr. Chapman. I'm so glad that you all revitalized Barefoot Estate because for years I've been asking the then government why don't they reactivate Barefoot. So I'm glad that you all are doing that. But now question number one. Mr. Chapman, what plan you all have to deal with the 2-foot long-tail corona which you call monkey? Because the farmers them cannot smile. Don't care how happy they be. They cannot smile because when they do anything, they go. When the plant slips and they go home. Next morning they go up there, they face thrown up, monkey destroy everything. So what plan do you all have to eliminate the population from that great number? I got another thing to say, but I'll leave them for another program.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your call. Right.
Well, Mr. Williams, if I could respond
Certainly.
to the caller's question as it relates to the monkey, and he wouldn't call the name, but I know what he speaks generally about. As just to add, we cannot totally eliminate anything. We must have the balance. Because, of course, the monkey serves a purpose in the biosphere and thing. We cannot totally eradicate or eliminate anything out of the good Father's nature. He has his plan and he knows how to use them. But of course, we have a monkey control program. There are many, so there are ways that, of course, trapping in areas that where farming clusters are heavy is one of the focus and plans that we are now rolling out. We have just reactivated that project. It was, of course, under evaluation, and we are now putting it back into play. Also, one of the things that you would have indicated the nation should, or the Federation should see, there's, I think Latoya would have made mention of it earlier in her presentation. When she was a little girl, she could have got fires and those hillside and find fruits. We have realized that over the years that the fruit trees in those higher elevated areas has been diminished, and the monkeys have worked their way down into society. So one of the plans we have going forward is to establish, I know it will take some time for these fruit trees to come in bearing, but we must establish them in order for the sustainability aspect of of the agricultural sector, because then of course people may not know this. Monkey has the a monkey or female monkey has the capability of reproducing twice within a calendar year. And then they're not like the females that are going to say, me just get a child, let me wait 4 or 5 years. They don't, well, personally I don't think they have that level of instinct, that thing, so they're just seeing that they need to reproduce their tribes, so they have that capability. But not to say all of that, we are encouraging farmers to also fence their farm with the solar panels and start to go away of this technological aspect. You fence and you use the solar panels as the electrical fencing, as when you give the monkeys a shock. And because in Mr. Williams, there's no one method that you can use that can control any problem. Right. So we are encouraging our farmers to use all innovative and corrective ways of trapping the monkey. He made a mention of them becoming a corona, but the biomedical facilities are also purchasing monkeys at a high price for shipping for the wider world to do research and to get the cure for for the coronavirus. So the Ministry of Agriculture has already engaged with the biomedical facilities and the trappers of this collaborative effort to catch the monkeys within the high clustered area, so that and send them and sell them to the biomedicals. So yes, we are engaged in a series of programs. Some I cannot say on air because of the sensitivity of the nature, but we are engaged in a comprehensive program that will address the monkey situation over a period of time.
Yeah, we certainly can't expect Planned Parenthood from monkeys.
No.
Right, now, Ms. Wilkes, the caller spoke about a trawler. Are you aware of anything like that was purchased and was supposed to be used for rent to fishermen and so on? Because that is one method of fishing, which is trawling.
Yes, it is one method of fishing, but I do not have any knowledge of a trawler being purchased by the Department of Marine Resources, nor by the fisheries complexes.
It is more used in places where you have mass fishing.
That's correct.
Of course, and if mass fishing is basically done, would we have the market for it? As I mentioned before, there were certain deficiencies in terms of storage facilities, in terms of refrigeration, having to get the fish off of your hand, and all of that sort of a thing. And sometimes to those trawlers and so on create what you call overfishing.
That's correct.
You know, but let's go to Mrs. Duncan, because, you know, we import a lot. We go back to that import bill, and a lot of what we import are processed foods. You know, a lot of preservatives and so on, because, of course, they have to have a very long shelf life, and wherever they're coming from, it takes them some time to get here, and they have a lot of things sprayed on them and so on to keep them fresh and all of that sort of a thing. What is the difference between processed foods, organic food, and, you know, how does that contribute to our health?
Okay, no. That's a tough question, Mr. Williams. Okay, when you look at processed foods, it's basically mean the food is no longer in the, to put it simple, in the natural form. It's not in the natural state anymore. These food items have been through multiple processes in order to get a certain end product. We have some food that are processed more than some. For example, let's take cornmeal from corn, for example. Usually it would probably just be corn ground up, and then you have cornmeal. However, even though for some food items you are now seeing variety of cornmeal, where you still have some cornmeal that is minimally processed, and some are considered highly processed food, which means a lot more went into that. So basically, processed foods, they are no longer in the state that you would know them as. An apple is not an apple no more. Corn is not corn anymore. It is something of a product of that food type. That's processed foods in a nutshell. Now, organic and inorganic, Now, that's a topic, especially when it comes to the Caribbean region. I mean, and don't get me wrong, we do use certain items here that would disqualify foods from being considered organic. Some of our farmers use different pesticides and herbicides and different things to ensure that they get a good outcome from their crops. But looking at the organic food and what is considered organic, for example, let's take poultry, for example. Organic chickens, the farm, they would expect that they have just this big area and the chickens run about and play like normal chickens. They rummage through the soil and they eat worms and different food items that are also considered organic foods for chicken. Whereas those chickens that would be considered inorganic would probably be on a farm where they are caged all day and they get fed certain foods that actually help them to mature a lot faster or to produce more eggs. Now, I would like to say in the Caribbean region, the organic and inorganic food, that's highly debatable for some farms, because sometimes it is difficult to track or to say specifically whether these foods are organic or inorganic. Some of our farmers, all they use is sunshine and rain. You know, some crops that are prone to worms, for example, farmers literally use their hands and pick them off. I know some farmers who still do that. So we still, when it comes to organic and inorganic food, sometimes some of my colleagues, they don't like to be involved in this argument, because sometimes you're not supposed to have a personal view on certain things and you're supposed to go with science. But in the Caribbean region, I mean in St. Kitts and Nevis and other countries like Dominica, I mean, I find most of our foods that are produced, I would still consider them organic foods because of how most of our farmers tend to still produce their foods. So, you know, it's, and when you look at, and another thing, I mean, organic foods, the price tag alone, you know, and some of these things, they are basically just plucked from a tree. And then most of the foods that you have on the shelves in St. Kitts and Nevis that says organic is foods that came from overseas. So think about it. I mean, I'm not going to say what I really want to say, but think about it when you have to purchase certain food items in your country that won't grow here, won't pick here, but they have the organic label on it. You know, you have to think about some of these. Why don't you want to say what you really want to say? Because I know some of my colleagues in the nutrition world would probably say, Taya, what have I told you?
Well, that is what I wanted to say. What you don't want to say.
You know, because I'm just saying that to preserve these food items are to get them here. I mean, some of them, you have what is known as flash freezing, for example. But still, it is not the normal way of which we would refrigerate items. And with food, the thing about food, there isn't enough research in nutrition to actually pinpoint certain things when it comes to food. Food, nutrition will always be one of those topics that is highly controversial, where you can always get a lot of debates on.
And what I know is definitely that a lot of these labels are false.
Yes, false advertising. Well, that's why consumers should know that they have choice, and there are ways that the consumers get manipulated when you look at certain food tags. You know, even just step away a little bit from agriculture when you see something that says reduced fat. Reduced fat is not the same thing as low fat. It's not the same. Naturally sweetened. Naturally sweetened is not the same thing as sugar-free. You know, but these are some of the labels that consumers see, and these are some of the things that lead, that tends to influence consumers' choice when it comes to what type of food items they want to select.
Yeah, we have a caller working for you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Duncan. Please talk the things them. So what you must say. Congratulations on a program like this. I think it's very timely. I think this is exactly what we need, and I hope that we can move from not just talking to real action, because food is life, and so if we are serious about good healthy living, it means that we must be extremely serious about the food that we eat. Where does our food come from? And when it comes to local food, the only thing I would always say, taste the difference. As long as you taste the difference, I tell you, you wouldn't want to go in the stores and buy any imported food. So once again, congrats on a program like this. Really timely, really meaningful. I'm so happy that we are going back to agriculture, because everybody really needs to plant what they want to eat and eat what they plant. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, Ms. Wilkes, Fisheries, the Department of Working for you. Good afternoon.
Hey, working for you, that's why.
Good afternoon, Jamdown.
That's why.
Yes, sir.
The lady, the caller before said it. And she didn't leave nothing for me to say. But I'm going to come with something because this program is so informative. I must congratulate the minister who trying to bring back the agriculture to where it was. It gone in the days we were looking for a minister who is cultureless. And I believe we found one. No, that's right.
Yes, sir.
You see the obesity in the people, even in the school. I have the opportunity to go around a couple schools just when they open. Just at the open. And if you see the obesity creeping in, because the kind of food we people eating, and they gotta be better than that. You could imagine kitty some parents at Sunday time lining up to go buy Chinese food to go give the children. What you expect, less one? What do you expect? Now, the question of the agriculture. I hear Rastaman was dealing in it a while ago. I was driving coming from the southeast. And he makes such an important point, let's why. And you might talk about it. He was saying that the government finance with agriculture, the farmers them, give them money to help them in this global time. And you know, when they get the help, and the produce come, they come down the market and kill the people. The money they're using to help them. Now how they do that? And you come down the market. You must be reasonable. I see like extorting, you know, with some, what they call it, pumpkin, you know. When everybody want $5 for Eli said he made $1.50 and he wasn't done before the rest of them down the market. You understand that's why? We farmers got to be a little more better than that. Now
we seem to have lost that caller, but he made some point, and the United Nations said that the impact of malnutrition in all its forms, whether it be on the nutrition, micronutrient deficiencies, as well as overweight and obesity on the global economy, is estimated at US dollars 3.5 trillion per year. That's a lot of money. The cost of malnutrition is very costly. Extremely costly, and he was speaking about that, the obesity and so on. So you mentioned the buying local, producing local, eating local, and so on, as opposed to importing all this processed foods. Now, Ms. Wilkes, fish. We import fish too. We import a lot of fish. The canned fish, the sliced fish, and so on. We do import fish. But what do you envision the future of the Department of Marine Resources and the fisheries complexes in the Federation to look like? What is your vision?
I will turn the question over to my
Okay, fine.
good
Okay,
friend Ian,
so Mr.
who wants to elaborate on it more than
Mr.
I want to.
Chapman, right.
Well, Mr. Williams, thank you. And
we can start wrapping up on that one.
Well, the broader vision for the whole, as Ministry of Agriculture, as related to the marine aspect and the fisheries component, as I alluded earlier, provisions for the aquaculture and training and development facilities, the development of marine management areas, the provision for more markets and fisher folks, the provision for adequate fish infrastructure to support the need of the industry, as you indicated, about the storage facilities. So that is one part of the infrastructural development that we have planned, and the training for fisher folk in the sustainable fishing practices to enhance food and nutrition security. That is one of the key components of the development and plans for the marine resource. As I wrap up, I would like to make an appeal to the general public and in the Federation to buy local, support our local farmers and fishers. As you, Ms. Duncan, would indicate, the food are more nutritious, more healthier for consumption. And while I would just put in the agriculture component of our event on Friday, to go out and support our local farmers at the Bastia Fisheries Complex. I think the event runs from 9 to about 8 in the evening. Yes. It will be an all-day event with our farmers, our fishers. You would have, I'll leave the fish component for Ms. Wicks to speak about, because they have me all excited about that fish. Latoya would have indicated it. She happy that we are doing something for fish and not the pork and things, but it's all debatable. But I would just like to invite the general public to come out, support our farmers and fishers on that day, and support them in general. What you will be eating, as one of the callers did indicate just a while ago, the product is, the quality and taste is far superior to any imported good.
Before we go to Ms. Wilkes, I just wanted to mention briefly, Mr. Chapman, the plans for the development of the livestock sector. Oh. I do know that there has been a resurrection of the Bearfords farm and so on. And what other plans do you have for that?
Well, the Bearfords, as we would now rename it or rebrand it, as they would say, is now named the Bearfords Livestock Center of Excellence, which now becomes a breeding stock farm, so that the farmers in general can get high quality breeding stock animals, so that they can get it there at a reasonable cost and go and, what you would say, rear it for the consumption.
What
also,
about dairy farming? Would that be part of it?
Whole comprehensive product. We'll also be introducing in time to come a slaughter and processing facility to do some of the value added. That I may not like this, but the value added components of some of the products that.
Okay.
I like all food items. Food is a part of our social, it's how we socialize.
That is correct.
Okay, correct. And biggest of all, Mr. Williams, a part of this is what the minister is more passionate about, and what the whole ministry department of agriculture, marine resources is passionate about, and fisheries, is the development of a broiler industry. The minister would have made mention of, when he was on Leadership Matters, that almost $74 million is imported in chicken alone into the Federation in a given year. And we have planned for a broiler industry, starting from the hatchery right down to the rearing, to the slaughtering, and then we send out to our people in the various supermarkets, restaurants, even to the household. So it's a whole comprehensive program and product that the Ministry of Agriculture will be embarking at Bearfords. So as I indicated, even the tourists, when they come, could do the agriculture or the agrotourism linkage of showing how we have now developed our farm to sustain our federation.
Okay, good. Now, Ms. Wilkes, and then we'll ask Mrs. Duncan to give closing remarks. So tell us all about the goodies that we have.
So with all that said, I would like to promote the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Marine Resources Farmers Fair and Seafood Festival. This event will be held on this Friday, 16th October 2020 at the Bastia Fisheries Complex grounds. Start time is at 9 a.m. and it goes on till roughly around 8:30. We'll be having local drinks on sale. We're having conch chowder served with garlic bread. We have fish water served with garlic bread. We have squid. Don't forget lobsters, fried fish, served with garlic bread also. We have grilled fish, steamed fish. All these sides will be served with Johnny Bakes, crab salads, rice and peas, our local corn, and our local veggies, of course. Don't forget our octopado, which is our octopus, West Indian top shell, which is our wilks, and we'll be also having our local caught, freshly fish caught, our lobsters. We have shark, we have tuna, mai, wahoo, and a whole mixture of our local pot fish will be available for purchase between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. Bear in mind, now is the chance to take advantage of our affordable prices of our local market. You can also ask about our pandemic reduced prices in our steaks and fillets of our mai, snappers, wahoo. It's just to name a few because it's too much.
Okay.
So you'll need to be there. So something will be keeping.
Okay.
So you'll need to be at the Basta Fisheries grounds on Friday. Don't be late.
So it's a fishy Friday.
It's yes, and a farmer's day. It's a agri and fishy.
Agri and fishy
Yes.
Friday. Okay, Mrs. Duncan.
Okay. In closing, I would just like to continue to state the fact that locally grown foods create important economic opportunities for St. Kitts and Nevis and abroad regionally and globally. It also provides health benefits and helps to reduce environmental impact. It also helps bring community together and give persons opportunity to make a difference. And while we are speaking about promoting local food, I have to include in here breastfeeding. Because it's local, it's even more natural than a lot of the food we produce. So I'm just encouraging our population to start thinking about breastfeeding, what breastfeeding really is, and that is nourishment to our babies. And not that it is to make women feel bad for wanting to breastfeed in public, because if the baby is hungry, you can't tell that baby weight. Okay? Right. So in my closing, I mean, all natural foods are of a benefit to everyone. So eat healthy, produce local, support agriculture.
Right, so I want to thank all of you very much for coming on today's program and for sharing on such a timely topic, that of how we can improve the agriculture and the fisheries sector here in St. Kitts and Nevis. We must be able to feed ourselves, better able to feed ourselves, to eat healthy. We must grow what is healthy. We must sustain what is healthy, and we must also nurture what is healthy. As it is here, grow, nourish, and sustain. Whatever we grow locally is to nourish us and to sustain us, and so on. Together, our actions are our future. Sustainability. Thank you very much, Ms. Wilkes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chapman. And thank you very much, Mrs. Duncan.
It was a pleasure.
It was my pleasure to be here.
My pleasure.
Thank you. You were listening to another edition of Working for You. I want to thank all of you who tuned in to our program today. Those of you who called in, asked your questions, or gave your comments, we thank you very much, and we continue to appreciate your company from week to week. Next week, we will be back with another Working for You program. Until then, I am Les Roy Williams.